The air crackled with tension thicker than the ship's failing oxygen reserves. My eyes flicked between the blinking red warnings on the control panel and the woman sitting across from me. Sarah, my ex-wife, my accidental co-pilot, and the absolute last person in the galaxy I wanted to be trapped with within this hunk of malfunctioning metal. "Do you have any brilliant ideas yet, genius?" Her voice dripped with sarcasm, which we both knew masked the all-too-real undercurrent of fear. "Just trying to think," I snapped back. See? That fear turned us spiky like two cornered porcupines. Why had I agreed to this stupid salvage job with her in the first place? Credits were credits, and my pride had a habit of overruling my brain. Now, both of us might die because of it. "We're down to 12 hours of oxygen," she said, the cool pilot in her finally surfacing. She always did her best when things fell apart. I hated that I still found it grudgingly impressive. "I know," I muttered, fingers flying over the unresponsive controls. The old freighter we'd scored, shady deal, long story, had picked now to throw a full-scale tantrum. Comms, navigation, propulsion, dead. We were a rock drifting on the edge of nowhere. "So we try venting atmosphere on Sector 4, Sarah continued. "Maybe a pressure surge will reset the mainframe." Desperate times, desperate measures. I saw the hope in her eyes, saw how it sparked a flicker of something I thought extinguished years ago. This wasn't about credits anymore. It was about not being the reason we both died. "Might work," I grumbled, reaching for the control sequence. It was a long shot, but we were out of good options. The silence stretched, broken only by the relentless beeping of the oxygen monitor. 10 hours. Suddenly the ship lurched so violently that I slammed into the panel. The lights sparked and died, plunging us into darkness. I heard Sarah gasp. "Max?" Her voice, sharp with fresh panic, cut through the blackness. Fear pricked at me. She may be my ex, but I certainly didn't want her hurt. "I'm here," I rasped, trembling my hands as I felt along the console. When my fingers brushed a smooth surface, I realized it wasn't the dash at all. It was her hand, reaching blindly for me. Our fingers tangled. A jolt passed through me. A jolt with zero to do with the short-circuiting ship, and everything to do with the woman beside me. Her hand was small and surprisingly delicate in mine. With a pang, I remembered how much her touch meant to me. "Sorry," she mumbled, as if sensing my thoughts. "Didn't mean to." Her voice trailed off. I tightened my grip slightly, not out of malice, but out of something I wasn't yet ready to name. "It's fine," I said, gruffer than I intended. The darkness was strangely intimate. The ship's hum was the only sound. The failing oxygen monitor didn't beep quite so loudly anymore. Just the two of us and this fragile tether between us. "We should try to find the emergency lights," Sarah whispered, as if breaking the spell would shatter whatever weird moment we were in. Of course, she was right. We couldn't sit here clinging to each other like scared children. Reluctantly, I unlinked our fingers. Using the faint glow from the damage display, we fumbled for the emergency kit, deliberate and awkward movements. The flashbeam cut through the gloom, harsh and accusatory. Sarah's face was pale but determined, the set of her jaw so achingly familiar it made my chest tighten. Hours ticked past in a blur of tense repairs and muttered curses. The pressure surge hadn't fully reset the mainframe, but it bought us time. The comms flickered alive, briefly, spitting out garbled static and a sliver of hope. "I think I caught a Mayday beacon," I said, peering at the distorted readout. "It's faint, but it's close." Sarah's eyes lit up, replacing the fear with that pilot's fire I knew so well. "Well, hotshot, what are you waiting for? Let's get the hell out of here." And with that, we fell into a rhythm. Not romantic, unlike before, but a rhythm honed from a decade spent together before it all went so spectacularly wrong. My directions, her hands on the salvaged equipment. The tension ratcheted lower, replaced by a sense of grim purpose. By the time the rescue cruiser appeared on the scanner, a beat-up old scow with more patches than the original hull, I felt strangely calm. I was exhausted, sure, and with a lingering ache in my chest. I didn't want to analyze, but peace had settled in the space where the panic used to be. As the cruiser docked, relief washed over me, mingled with a pang of something regret. It was ridiculous. Sarah and I were oil and water, always had been. Her ambition burned hot while I craved the slow life. But facing death together had stripped away those arguments, those old hurts. "Well, that was interesting," she said with a wry grin as we waited in the airlock. Her eyes held a question, echoing that moment in the darkness. I still wasn't sure how to answer it. "Yeah," I mumbled, shoving my hands in my pockets to hide their slight tremble. This was it. Once outside this ship, we'd scatter like blaster bolts. We'd go back to our lives that didn't involve each other, lives that were easier that way. Then, she did something unexpected. Sarah leaned forward and placed a quick, feather-light kiss on my cheek. "Thank you, Max," she whispered. It wasn't a renewal of vows, an invitation back into each other's lives. It was acknowledgement, a truce, maybe. "Any time," I said hoarsely, a matching smile tugging at my lips despite myself. The airlock hissed open, revealing the grizzled face of a rescue captain who'd clearly seen it all. His eyes skipped between us, a flicker of amusement in them. We might have been a disheveled mess, but for one brief, insane moment, we'd been a team. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't something to throw away so easily. Stepping onto the cruiser, I paused, turning back to Sarah. She watched me, a mix of uncertainty and that spark of stubborn determination that was so damn familiar. "Listen, about that salvage job," I started. She held up her hand, stopping me. "Drinks first. Then we can discuss just how much you owe me for saving your stubborn hide." A laugh bubbled up in my throat. It was a starting point, clumsy and full of unspoken things, but still a start. Sarah might be the worst person to be stranded with, but sometimes the worst situations reveal a truth you couldn't see any other way. We ended up back on some dingy space station saloon with sticky floors and a clientele rougher than asteroid grit. The drinks were terrible, but neither of us cared. The air was thick with recycled oxygen and the raucous chatter of spacers, a far cry from the suffocating solitude of our broken freighter. "So," Sarah said, leaning across the battered table, "about that job?" "Split it 60-40, I countered. "You did most of the heavy lifting." She scoffed, but I saw the corner of her lips twitch. 50-50. You'd be breathing space dust if it wasn't for me. We haggled, the old familiar banter slipping back in like a well-worn glove. It was comfortable, this adversarial dance. There was tension between us, sure, but it wasn't the harsh kind anymore. Hours later, as the first rays of a foreign sun peeked through the grimy station windows, we finalized a deal. I agreed to another salvage mission with her, the thrill of the near-death experience sparking a reckless streak in both of us. "You know," she said, voice low as she gathered her things, "it wasn't so bad." "What, almost dying?" I teased, a grin spreading across my face. "No, idiot," she smiled, rolling her eyes playfully. "This." She gestured between us at the empty glasses, the deal scribbled on a napkin, the lingering buzz of something unspoken. "It has its moments," I admitted, surprised by the truth of it. Standing in the doorway, the stale station airs a shock after the claustrophobic ship. We faced each other. The distance wasn't physical anymore. "You know, I think we make a good team, Max," Sarah remarked, more to herself than to me. "Dysfunctional but effective," I agreed. She studied me, hinting at the vulnerability I remembered peeking through her pilot's mask. Then, with a familiar toss of her head, she turned and walked away, her boots echoing in the empty corridor. Watching her go, I felt that strange pang in my chest again. It wasn't love, not the way it had been, but it was something, an acknowledgement of shared history, of facing the void and seeing the other person clearer than ever before. Maybe being stranded with your ex in the depths of space wasn't the worst thing in the universe after all. Months later, I found myself on the bridge of a ship that didn't squeak and shudder with every maneuver. It was Sarah's ship, new and sleek. I still wasn't sure how I felt about ending up her co-pilot again. It was reckless, probably stupid. But life was short, and some risks weren't as bad as they seemed on the surface. "Welcome aboard, partner," Sarah greeted me with that infuriatingly smug grin, the one that said she knew exactly what I was thinking. "Don't get too excited," I grumbled, tossing my bag down with a calculated nonchalance that probably didn't fool her at all. She walked over, studying me with those disconcertingly shrewd eyes. "You know, you don't have to do this. You could turn around, walk right out that door." Part of me wanted to escape the tangle of half-healed scars and newfound understanding that always swirled around her. But the other part, the newly reckless part, whispered something about unfinished journeys. "Let's just get this over with," I said, sliding into the co-pilot's seat, a huge smile on my face. Sarah's grin widened as she punched in the coordinates. "Buckle up, Max. This time we're aiming for the heart of the nebula. Wouldn't want to get bored, would we?" The familiar adrenaline rush surged through me, countering the odd warmth in my chest. She was right. Boring was the last thing I wanted. As the ship accelerated, stars streaking past, I turned to look at Sarah. She was focused, utterly at home at the controls. She might be just as impossible and maddening as ever. Still, she was also brilliant and daring. The universe seemed a little less empty with her in it. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough of a reason to dive into another adventure with my downright disastrous ex, hurtling towards whatever unpredictable destiny awaited us out there in the vastness of space.